Maybe Zaria will come try to talk us all into coming to her recital. Yeah, we'll give it a minute. We'll let a few more people show up. Want to get you the good crowd, you know. There he is. See, I told you. I was like, there's nobody here for announcements, but I knew you would show up. All right, I guess we'll do it. Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome. Woo-hoo-hoo. All right. We've got a fabulous guest for you today, but first, announcements.
Hello, I am Zaria Sims. I'm a senior here at Loyola, but I'm having my junior recital this Saturday at 3:00 p.m. in this auditorium. I'm playing all new original music that I wrote like 2 weeks ago. And it's gonna be a lot of fun. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Please come out, it's free.
Hi everyone, I'm Maggie and I'm the artistic director for the Crescent City Film Festival, and we opened our entries and one of the categories is music videos. So if you have a music video, it's free for you as a student, so there's no reason not to. And submissions close on Valentine's Day, so you have a while. Thank you.
Hey guys, if you don't know me by now, I'm Michael. I make announcements every week. This is like actually my time slot, right, Jeff? Yeah, it's my time slot. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so if you probably saw it already up there, Zeta is playing at Hi-Ho Lounge with Quarks this weekend on Friday. It is, I believe it's a $10 cover, which is only double $5. It's not that much. So y'all come check it out. Also, only double $5. Also, there's this narrative that Zeta doesn't do house parties. That's false. Reach out to me if you ever want us at a house party, we'll do it. Because the ones I went to this weekend were awesome, and y'all are great. All right, take care.
What's up, y'all? Ooh. You can obviously tell I don't speak on a microphone. Yeah, feel the love. Yep. My internship, The Funky Uncle, is putting on shows at the Howlin' Wolf beginning this Wednesday with Kevin and the Blues Groovers. It's only $5 if you show your ID at the door, and all donations.
You gotta pause. Say it again. How much is it?
It's only $5.
Only $5. I feel like y'all gotta step it up a little bit.
And all the money from ticketing actually gets put into our fund that gets dispersed to local musicians and gig workers in need. So you get to see an awesome show and donate to an awesome cause. So come on by. Howlin' Wolf starts at 7.
Wednesday at 7 at the Howlin' Wolf. Cool. Thank you, thank you. All right, so we've got a fabulous guest today, and to get you rolling, we're going to start with one of his music videos.
Traveling with friends, learning who we are, getting about the past and
Please welcome Anders Osborne. He brought a guitar. We might have extra fun. So I love that there was a role in the video called Jazz Fest Dad. That speaks to my heart. Yeah, we can now. Y'all can't, but we can. When you teach your class, you can too now. So welcome. I think. Is it up? Here. It is not making light. I think we got a bum one. Or is it? Yeah. They light up. Can we swap one of these out, please? Thanks. Here. I'll talk loud for a second and give you this one.
It's okay. It's just kind of what happens to me in my life in general. If it's technical, it'll break.
So, here, take that one.
Okay.
So I know you in like a number of roles as a performer originally, and then as a songwriter, and also as a producer. Like I know a number of people. Thank you. A number of people whose records you've produced. This one's going to come on in a second.
Hello.
Lights are on it. Anyway, how does this like performer, songwriter, producer thing fit together for you? When you think about yourself, what do you see?
As far as that part of my life goes,
Don't go too deep on that.
okay. I think of myself as a songwriter first, and that's what I started out doing. I was writing poetry and melodies and stuff when I was probably, I don't know, 8 or 9 or something. And then that's where the passion started. And then later on, I started playing instruments, a little bit of drums, and then guitar got a hold of me. And yeah, just whatever I got good at faster, I tended to kind of stick with that. And eventually, I didn't really set out to make music my career as a performer. That wasn't what I did. But I loved writing. I always wrote, still write very often. But then eventually, I didn't graduate from college. I didn't have a diploma from high school. A lot of those things happened. And I was tired of doing, washing dishes and working at horse farms and just shitty jobs. So I started playing on the streets down at Jackson Square, and then I started playing at clubs. And eventually, I think what happened was, it was fun. It was like, it was kind of carefree, and it met a lot of people. And then eventually, I started to hear broader. So I didn't just think of my songs as something to perform, but I was hearing arrangements, instrumentations, moods, and that's where the producer hat came in, which I still enjoy, but I don't do it a lot anymore. But I think maybe a handful of times a year, 2, 5 times a year. But I like the idea of producing other people as a complement to my own career, because everybody I work with has a completely unique way of looking and hearing their own music. So no matter what my idea is, my job becomes to find out, how do you hear this? And that, I love that process. And then enhance that, bring that out.
I want to dig into that a little bit. That's fascinating. So how do you go about that? Like, I've heard stories about somebody, I heard a podcast the other day, they were talking about producing a Janet Jackson record, and they essentially went to movies and went to the park and hung out for a few days. And because it was like a co-writing thing, they were going to start writing the songs. And she at one point said, well, when are we going to start working? And the guys were like, no, we started. We've been working for days, know. And that was like her first real breakthrough record, because that music was really things she wanted to say.
Yeah.
So how, if you have an artist that you're going to produce, how do you go about figuring out how they hear their stuff?
Well, first what I do is I have a conversation, and you try to make it. I want them to start talking about not so much the music, but where they are. Like, if they're my age, they might be going through a divorce. If they're younger, they may be trying to finish college, or they're going through drug addiction, or they're trying to kick something, or they're whatever it is. Those are parts I enjoy finding out where you are. And then we sort of ease into, okay, so are you a late night person? So I dig into all these things in the first conversation. Not too deep, but just a little bit. And then once I get that, I usually start getting ideas of we should do it in the fall, or we should be in the desert, or we should, like I start shaping the setting of the recording. And this is before I've heard the songs. Then I ask them for the songs, and then I'd see where I was. Like, okay, definitely this is a winter record. Right. We should see if it's better to maybe. Now it's a winter record. Who's really good on drums in the winter? Who can really complement those kind of tones, right? And who lives where? Who's a good bass player with this drummer? Because this drummer is really somber and quiet. So we need someone that cracks jokes so we can balance. Right. So that's kind of the whole and then so you get the cast with all the information I get from the artist. And then I try to infuse into the artist that this is going to be a masterpiece. Not, I'm going to try to make a decent record. We don't have time for that. We're going to make a masterpiece. We're going to make the best record that's ever been made. And once you can infuse that messiah complex into the artist, you work that whole part, they start to believe not only in themselves, but in their own ideas. They think they're really creative now because they are. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. If that doesn't come about, then it's harder for me to produce. I want them to rise up and guide me on every little area. And then I'll say, okay, small things will show up later on, like how to pan things to get certain things should be on your left ear, which is your emotional side. It goes to your right brain. Meter should be on your right ear. It goes to your left brain. All these things, you can maneuver these things. That's much later. But you want to get, so you see the whole casting? That's the key.
The seasonal thing is fascinating. I always just made my records whenever I could book the time. What's the difference between a fall record and a winter record or a summer? All right, let me broaden that. You talked about setting. Like, do you really feel like how much does the setting, the studio, the place you're in affect what you do?
For me, it's the majority. Time of the year. I'm a morning person, so I wake up with the sunrise. But I worked for 35 years, I've toured the entire world playing late night shows. Right. In the studio, I get to do the opposite. I get to actually be who I am, right? So for me, when I make records, it has to be very close to what I consider my true self.
I like that. Did y'all hear that? True self. Write that down. So you grew up in Sweden. How'd you end up in New Orleans?
Long story. I had family here, and then we moved to California and was there for a minute, and then back to Sweden. And then when I was 16, before I had finished high school, I left and started hitchhiking. And I met a guy that looked not just American, but he looked sort of something different. I don't know. There was something about him. He jumped on this bus in Dubrovnik, and he was from New Orleans. And we started talking, and we traveled together for several months, and then I just went over there. He lived in Slidell, actually. And then I went to New Orleans, and that was 1985, 86, like we talked about. Yeah. So that's it.
You said something backstage. That's if any of you ever end up doing interviews, there's this fine line between finding out what you're going to talk about and giving away the good stuff. There was something you said about the way people deal with music in New Orleans. Talking about nobody was trying to have the big show.
So not that I had a lot of experience with shows prior to that. It was more high school. We put together our own shows, stuff like that. But here, sneak into clubs, you know, when I was in my late teens, and I learned quickly that they just play. It's Thursday, it's Monday, it's Sunday, happened to be Friday. It wasn't so much a big show, big lights. It was in the moment, a performance, just, I don't know, it was just in the moment. Just like meeting people in the grocery store, you end up, you know, the ice cream melts and you talk for 50 minutes. And it had the same impact on me. And I felt like that's more how I remember, like, the Southern Mediterranean area and flamenco music and stuff like that. I don't know, it just felt more organic and folky.
Yeah, that the music is just a part of life.
Yeah.
We do this thing where we get real into, like, okay, I'm gonna make a career and I have to do this and I have to build that. And like there's value in all of that, but I wonder if we lose things when it becomes not just a part of the flow. You eat, you drink coffee, you make music, you talk to your friends, you do, you know, those are just all things that we do.
Yeah, I was questioned once in my teens too. It's an old man who said, "So, they tell me you play music." And I'm like, "Yeah. So are you a music man or a musician?" I was like, I don't know what the difference is, but I was like, I think I'm a music man. Okay, good. And then I asked, what's the difference? He goes, a music man shows up and plays at weddings, birthdays, special events, funerals. When he is needed or she is needed, they come and play. A musician shows off.
Someone once asked me, what's the difference between a songwriter and a composer? A songwriter would never write something they couldn't play. So we are hopefully on the backside of some of this pandemic and performance space, but you've had a good run of doing Facebook shows during the pandemic. I know we've all sort of taken like different approaches to our online thing. Talk about that a little bit. What'd you do? What worked well for you? How did that come about?
So I had just landed in Tacoma, and we were going to play Tacoma, Seattle, and then I had a long 3-4 week tour, which was going to end up being another few months of touring. And so, like a lot of us, if not all of us, we ended up just losing tons of money right up front when they canceled everything. So first, I just, you know, I was crying. And I was like, what the hell am I gonna do? And then I flew back and I talked to a couple of friends, and they said, we're all in this together, we're gonna figure it out. And once I got a little breathing room, I thought, what if I do something that is not about money? So back to what you were saying before. What if I find a platform or a place where I just play? And I play songs that I never get to play when I perform live with my rock band. Cover tunes that I would never dare to try. I'm not really a jazz guy, even though that's something I listen to mostly. I thought maybe I should learn. Anyway, I thought, where could that be? And so I talked to my management, and we said, why don't we set up like a Friday evening at Facebook? I have enough fans that I should just play for free and just go play every other Friday. So we talked, should we do every Friday? Should we do twice a week? Should we ask for tip? How do we do this? Do we charge? And so what I did was, I think we play every other Friday so they don't get sick of it, and then I play for free. I don't charge anything. We don't ask for anything. We just play. And I was just really lucky, and it became a pretty popular gathering spot for all my fans, and other people start showing up, and it was good. Yeah, and then they start tipping. They were asking for, how can I send you some money? And PayPal and Venmo showed up, and it just started to snowball a little bit. So that was a good.
How long did that roll strong?
Strong about 8-9 months. Then it dipped again, and then it came back up a little bit. And now lately, because I've been touring a bit, it's dropped. But I'm picking up season 3, as we call it. in a couple of weeks, we're going to start again. And I'm going to do it the same way with, just the intention is to, I don't know, just provide music. Because it's basically free on Spotify and all the other, streaming facilities. When I had my first #1 hit song that I wrote for someone, the money was very muscular. It was a big sum. And now I've had big hit songs in streaming, and it's pennies. Yeah. There's nothing, right? So clearly there's been a big shift where you can't...
Especially on the songwriter side.
Yeah.
Like, it's different on the performer side, but on the songwriter side, it's very different.
It's really, really weak. So I think we've learned, all of us have learned the past 10 years to pivot from one place to the next and figure out, okay, what's the next thing to do? If I play these gigs, and you start lining up small details of, people may say beanies, trucker hats, T-shirts, and I go, well, what's your crowd? So I had to tell my manager, you're catering to 28-year-old, 35-year-old, hippie kids that go to Fish. I'm a 55-year-old man that's dealing with drug problems. I'm going to sell different merch.
Right.
Right? So I think...
They don't sell all the weed grinders at your show? That's not
No. So you got to look at, but that actually is a really important part, I think, of, if this is a business forum, but just to see, even if you have 100 fans or 50 fans, who are they? Get to know them. And this has been something I struggled with for a long time, until maybe the last 3-4 years. I started to look at the details of, oh, these are people that traveled all through life with me. We met when I was a teenager or early 20s, and now we're still together. They still buy my records. They still come to shows. So essentially, we're one family. Maybe I should get to know them really well. You know what I mean? So I turn it around and start asking questions and gather information, not to sell stuff, but to get to know them. Now I can also turn around and go, hey, I do a lot of oil on canvas. I know some of you guys are into, and then you can dish that out.
Yeah.
Right? Does that make sense?
And it's a real honest connection around some shared experience.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I liked about the online performance scene, especially like the pre-recorded ones, but even I've seen people do it live as well, is the activity in the chat.
Yeah.
It's like you get to hang out with your friends. And I've done a couple of gigs with Mike Dillon where Mike would stop between songs and have to answer people on Facebook. But those were also we made great tips, like Dylan's people come out.
Yeah. But that's how it works. Yeah.
Yeah, that's this is a weird question right now. In regular times, how much of the year do you spend on the road?
Well, there used to be 8 to 9 months not home, and that's not sustainable. But things change. Once again, streaming changed everything, because once you take away certain parts of your income, I would say 10, 15 years ago, everybody had to hit the road. All of us, like what I call blue-collar musicians. We're out there pounding it. Well, that means we're now saturating the market. So now the value goes down, unless you're one of the bands that draw 5 to 10,000 people. So once again, I had to do some assessment of what that means. I missed all my, both my kids' birthdays. I missed holiday. I missed everything. So was it worth it? No. That was a bad decision I made, to stay out there. I didn't need that much money. It just didn't. So again, 2017 was a big turning point where I looked at everything started to feel like it was time to change dramatically. And so I started to look at, what is it that I need to make every year? How many gigs do I want to play? How much is the net adding up to that amount? So I reversed it. Instead of per gig pay. So if you need to make $1,200 a month, let's say you're a student and you're like, I need $1,200 a month. So what is that a year? That's 12. 24, so that's, what, help us out.
$14,400.
Yeah. So how do you divide that? 100 gigs, that means you get $145 a gig. There it is. If you get twice that, 350 gigs a year. Okay, this is not a lot of money, but you do the same if it was 140,000 you need to make. Now you get down to, I need to make 1,500 a gig, right? To do 100 gigs, so forth. That changed everything, because then I could go, well, I can't do all that much, so now let's say I wanted to make 60,000. I'm 20 shy. Where do I get that other 20? Yeah. That's where production comes in. That's where merchandise comes in. That's where Facebook, all these things come in to pad to get to where you need to be, instead of just one thing, which is I tour.
That's great. How did you get to this way of thinking about this? Was this influence from management, or was this just sort of you realized, like, I want my life to work the way I want it to work, and you got there?
Yeah, I have been meditating. So I recovered from drug and alcohol abuse almost 13 years ago, and that changed, like, everything I look at. So there's meditation, there's eating certain things, and there's a gradual growth of self-awareness and social awareness and lifestyle awareness, right? Yeah. So I don't go hang out in bars unless there's a reason for me to be in bars. I don't go to the barbershop every day if I don't need a haircut. Eventually, I'm gonna get a freaking haircut, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's the same with this. So if I tour in bars and clubs and theaters and festivals 9 months out of the year, at what point do I relapse? At what point do I lose touch with my family completely and spirituality? Traveling probably an average of 8+ hours a day, sleeping in different beds, eating cold food at 2 a.m. every single day. How long can you do that before something snaps, right? So that's how I got to it. I went, this is not working with what I want. Yeah. So I started to look at how can I cut it? Where can I raise my price? Which markets are better? It sounds really cerebral and academic, but it's all spiritual. You just have to meditate on these, for me anyway. I have to meditate on it, I have to think about it, and then I have to practically implement with management. If you don't have management, then you just got to figure it out, and you can write it down, and you figure out how you want to do it. But I think the number one thing we want to do in the music business is we want to create something, and I'm assuming you guys feel the same, that moves us and others the same way as music moved you the first time that impact came. When you heard that stuff, that like, what the fuck is this, right? Yep. We want to do that too. I mean, that was my drive. Whatever song I heard, whatever, musical experience I had, Pink Floyd, 1976, Wish You Were Here, headphones. What the fuck? Yeah. Well, I want to do that, right? None of it says I want to be famous. None of it said I want to be known everywhere. None of it says I want to be rich. None of it equates to the things that I later learned through ambition that I have to do. So I got to go back to source all the time, which is I just want to make that impact on myself and hopefully on other people. Because someone made that happen to me, and I now felt connected to everything. Not to a guitar solo, to everything. God was in the presence, you know what I mean? That's how large music can be. Well, if you run it all the way through ambition, that's going to go away.
That's fabulous. I feel like we should drop the mic right there, but there's more good stuff. You mentioned being on the road and staying sober. You're involved with, is it the Send Me a Friend? Is that what it's called? Talk about that a little bit. I think that's a great initiative.
So when I first got clean, I don't want to get into the war stories too much, but I lived in City Park for over a year, homeless and, bankrupt and foreclosure, couldn't see my kids or nothing. And so I was really down and out. You don't have to get that far to have an addiction. You can be popping pills and function pretty good. But what happened was I had no education and no means of making money. The only thing I knew was playing music. So at the rehab in California, they said, you should probably quit music and get a different job and take a break and get yourself on your feet. And I was like, working at McDonald's at 45, that's weird. But it was an option. But I didn't. I went back on the road. My tour manager was a coke dealer. My drummer was a heroin addict. Basically, like, you get the picture. It was just the same old shit out there. And after a few months of white knuckling and going to meetings and doing all that, I thought, there's got to be like a support system we can have. So I started to ponder the idea of having other sober people come out to sit with musicians, music industry people like managers, roadies, sound crew, whatever, and come just keep them company while they work so they can go back to work. Not get them sober, not take them to meetings, none of that, just keep them company. And so after a few years of thinking about it, I called a friend of mine in town who also handles Trombone Shorty's thing, and his name's Bill Taylor, amazing guy. He and I got together, and so we designed this, Send Me a Friend. And that's basically what we do. You show up, so you call, we have a network all over the country. People show up 30 minutes before you have to play and perform, and then they leave maybe 30 minutes after. And that way you have somebody there while you work.
That's fabulous. And it's like a support. It is literally just a friend. Like, hey, I'm here.
Yep, that's it. They don't have to talk or nothing. Just if you need me, I'm here. And you sit through the show.
That's great. It's amazing how that little bit of thing, like whatever I've like had to quit smoking before, and it's hard. And then there's like that time when you're like, oh, I could go have a cigarette right now, and just your one friend's like, yeah, you don't want to do that. That's all right. You're like, oh yeah, you're right. Okay, it's cool.
Let's go for a walk.
Yeah, or whatever. That's fabulous. Would y'all like to ask Anders some questions? Give us a little bit of light. Let's see who's out there. We never get with the halfway on the light. DJ, what's up?
So, I guess you're pretty aware, this is a college, so, a lot of us are doing drugs and stuff of that nature, right? What would you advise for us that are surrounded by that type of stuff, and what type of check-in should we be having with ourselves to make sure if we are choosing to do those things that we're adequate in nature?
That's a great question. So first off, I don't regret my drug use. It's not like that at all. I'm not a somber guy. I did acid tons of times, and it was freaking awesome. I've seen past lives. I've talked to all kinds of cool people. I was a pothead for a long time. I was a big beer drinker. I loved it. I was a wine collector. The check-in you should have, this is what I tell my kids who are in college now too. Have someone you can call if you get into trouble. Doesn't matter what kind of trouble you're in. You're with 3 people that you shouldn't be with, and you get some shit starting to go down, and you get that like, fuck, I gotta get out of here, right? Who do you call? Make sure that so that's called planning. That's like designing your situation. You don't have to overthink this. Just know who to call if you feel like all the way, fuck, I've been drinking so much, I blacked out. I had a 3-day blackout. I don't know what we did. That's usually not cool signs. Blackouts are usually like, whoa. It's okay if it happens one time, you drank so fucking much, so fast, and you went down, right? But if it's a thing, then maybe have someone to call. Don't call rehab, if you can't call your parents, find someone else. But I told my kids, Mom and I are the call. no matter what, no judging, no shame, no guilt. We'll come get you, we'll help you out. So I think that was the number one thing I didn't have growing up. I could not call my parents. No freaking way, right? I went to jail a few times, still wouldn't call my parents. I would spend the night in jail. So that's a bad sign. So that's the one thing I learned is you gotta have a phone call, someone that you go, I think I'm in trouble, or trouble's about to happen. If you're in a crowd where you keep feeling like you're kind of uncomfortable all the time, heroin starts showing up, they're smoking it or some shit like that, and you're not going down that path because you're actually not that depressed, you're actually not that filled with trauma, or even if you are, it's not where you are at this moment of your life, then how do you get out of that group? Because maybe you do other shit that's fun. Back to the phone call. It's like having a big brother, big sister, something that you can, even if it's a friend, but you can bounce your insides, your feelings with that person. That would be my number one. I can't do it alone. I call people 13 years in sobriety. I still text gratitude lists. I have all these, I go to meetings still, Zoom meetings. I keep checking in because I reached a point where I went past the tipping point, so I don't trust myself. But I'm not obsessed anymore. I don't think about drugs and alcohol every day. I mean, I'll function perfectly fine. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Kind of? No, yeah, just someone to call, I think is the best. Great.
There was Jeffrey Dupuy, who's an addiction counselor, music fan, friend of mine, had a great line one time. Somebody asked him, how do you know if you have a bad drug habit? Or how do you know if you're addicted? And he said, well, people who aren't addicted tend to not ask that question. So because you're asking the question doesn't mean you are, but maybe you should take a look at how it's affecting your life. Yeah. And I think, well, yeah. Yes.
Yeah, that's a good question. I get that too sometimes. Sometimes that could be what's needed for the record, that it's gonna be, you're gonna be the captain. I've done records where they're like, no, it's fine. But I think you still have to, depending on the length, is it a weekend, is it a one-day production, is one song? Nowadays, a lot of people are just doing one side, like it's not a whole record. We usually design, like me growing up in the 70s, is like, oh, it's, we have this dream of how we're just for 3 months hanging out in, countryside of England or something. But I think you still have to understand who they are. You can still drive the ship. But if you're really curious about what they really think, listen to their guitar vocal demos. Like, ask them to, can you go in the room next, blah, 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 and record on a voice memo, record a song right now on piano or guitar and vocals or something. If it's a beat, just drum beat or something electronic, just put a basic foundation and then sing it. I need to kind of hear it again. Then you can hear where they put the tempo. Maybe they're singing really low and you envision it being more up, so you move the key up a couple of steps to get them to belt and sing higher. You didn't want too much of a certain timbre. You wanted them to feel like it was more urgency, which I will do sometimes, and I will raise the key right before they break. Well, maybe that's not how they hear the song. Maybe they sing and they do this down. they're down here, and I took it somewhere totally wrong. That usually helps me. Their own little small demo. Not produced demo, just them singing it with one instrument. Is that good?
Cool. Other questions? Yeah.
So you mentioned the songwriting was like a large part of what you do, and I was just wondering, like, how do you keep like variation in songwriting if it's like a regular, like, I mean, I'm trying to do it more regularly, and I'm finding that I'm kind of relying on the same patterns or habits of writing. How do you like break out of that?
Great question. So I was asked to do a workshop 4 or 5 years ago at a songwriting camp, and I had never thought about this process before. So I actually have an answer. And what I do, which I didn't realize, but once I dissected how I did it and broke it down, I have several different instruments. So there's let's say a ukulele. I happen to have so many guitars. You don't need that. You need 2 or 3. They're different if you can have it. Super cheap one, maybe your favorite one, some odd one that you pick up in whatever. Borrow one from a friend. Then you put capos and you use different tunings and you put them in different spots in the apartment or in the house. And you make sure you move around. I can give you a demonstration of how I seek for this, if you want, real quick. No, it's okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's gonna be, I think. This is where I keep my paraphernalia.
This songwriter paraphernalia.
So, if you have, let's say, G, G is your throat chakra, right? It lives right in. A is your, intuition. They're very different. C is your root chakra. Okay, so each key puts you somewhere. Now, what if you want the G position, but you want to be up here, let's say B flat. I just want to plug and play Stones right now, right? That's how I find new inspiration. It can be the same, but you move the key. You can do that with changing, so each guitar is going to do something different too. Tempo is regulated by the key. Do you hear how the key demands a certain tempo? It's not something that you decide. The key will tell you where to put the tempo. So work with the capo. If you're on piano, same thing. Move to the black keys. Move back to the white keys. Push it. Like move those things around. Invert the chord. Play it, differently. And then you have also, I'm playing here. This needs to project. If I want to go outside, let's say I'm in a corner, I would probably sing differently here than on front stage. If I sit in the park, I'll be really shy. So if I'm outside in public, I would write smaller songs, intimate songs. Quick example, I used to have a writer room. So I sat in the writer room, I closed the doors, I had little kids at the time, set it all up, all my stuff. Any kind of noise, oh, fuck, come on, man, I'm working in here, man, I'm creating. All this energy was very restricted. My little kids started like, open the door, it's a glass door. Before you know it, I'm like, fuck it, I'm opening the door, they start coming in, my songs changed. They're running around, and I'm writing very different. Not just songs for kids, but just, it was an openness. So I said, I'm gonna go out in the kitchen. So So I moved to the kitchen. Now I wrote even more. Everybody's going around, you know, doing homework, whatever. Well, I learned that that's the same thing. If I go outside, I write. So try different places. Try morning before you brush your teeth or anything. Just go straight and start. Because now you're wide open. So the magical hour of the universe, especially our planet, is between 4 and 6. Maybe it's 3:30 to 6 a.m. That's when everything is getting ready to do its thing. So it has the most transparent energy. And that goes for humans too. That's when you're open. At night, you're now gathering all the experience you've had, and you want to write it down. So that's more diary writing. It's a different type of writing. So these are very different. In the middle of the day, you're going to be much more present here on Earth. Hope I don't sound too esoteric.
No, yeah, no.
Okay.
Esoteric makes good songs, right on. Gabe?
So I feel like I've written all these songs, produced all this work, right? I have a really hard time like letting go of my work and saying, hey, y'all can listen to this, you know, in a recorded format, right? How do you, when you're producing a record, how do you know when that record is done? Because I always have the hardest time, oh, this drum needs this, and this thing needs that. And just letting it saying, okay, this is done, and I can show this to people, you know?
Great question. So, this is a very common struggle. I have friends that I've worked with, they're drummers, and they're super musical, and they're like, I gotta make a record, I gotta make it, and 22 years later, they haven't fucking put a record together, right? And I think the difference between them and me, because I'm the complete opposite, I'll play it before it's ready. I'll record it on a demo, and you know, anyone can hear it, I don't care. So that's a dramatic. I think the difference is that at some point I realized, there's two things to this, I'll get to both. The number one thing is I stopped comparing my stuff to other people's things, okay? My guitar sounds good when I am happy with it, not when, So once I stopped comparing drum sounds with this recording and this and my favorite, that, all that went away. Now it gets to what's happening right here as we're mixing it. Let's say you're talking mixing, is that what you're talking about, kind of? Master, okay. In the mixing process, the one thing I learned from the hundreds and maybe thousands of recordings I've been part of, you'll see this. Woo! That's what starts to happen. People are standing up, and they start moving, and they're like, oh, oh. That's when it's happening. Doesn't matter what you think, that's when it's happening. And that may mean that the maracas is so fucking loud, you're like, that can't be. Don't touch it. That may mean that the bass is a little too woofy. Don't touch it. As soon as that experience comes, now it's ready. It's cooking. Does that make sense? That's been my experience. And if I trust that, man, you're gonna get bad reviews. People are gonna go, there are people that can't stand my music, but I can't change that. I just can't fix it. It's my music, and my favorite music on the whole planet is my music, okay? That took me a long time to get to, because I thought I was just less than everybody that was successful. Not at all. I make my favorite music. That's the whole point, right?
I'm changing the name of the program to I Make My Favorite Music. I love that. Up there. Up, yeah.
I kind of have a two-part question. One, how do you incorporate meditation and spirituality in general into your music? And then how do you keep that balance when you're on the road?
These questions are awesome.
We have smart kids. They know
Yeah,
what's up. Yeah.
everybody's definitely smarter than I was at my time. Damn. I incorporate it. I do it every day, so it's a part of my routine. And so I meditate usually on a larger perspective. Like I'm trying to reduce my ego as much as possible. That's a big part. I don't want my thinking to be in the way of my experience of life. Because my thinking is a tool. My brain is trying to fix problems, which means that when I use my brain, I'm looking for a problem, okay? My hand is there to touch someone or to grip something. So I can choose. I want my brain to solve problems when there is a problem. So meditation for me is to reduce me looking for problems so I get out of my own way. That applies to my music the same way. Stop writing for the wrong reasons. So when I write, it's usually really spontaneous. I don't have a big purpose. I'm not trying to write a political song or a heartbreak song. You know how it is as a writer. They just kind of come up. Some start with lyrics. I start with music and a little tagline, like one line of some lyrical content that then triggers me to get, like, do you want me to show you? And I'll get to the road in a second. Do you guys use the voice memo for ideas? Yeah, of course you do. I'm the one that's behind. I'm a different generation. So let me see.
Used to have to carry a little micro cassette recorder around
Totally,
with you. Yeah.
constantly. So now, what I do is I give them titles, and I pretend that they're going on a specific record. This is part of my meditation thing. So simpler times. The streetcar shuffle, hard and fast. I wish I was innocent. So you go, that means I can now catalog the smallest little idea. These are not songs. They're just mumbling, a beat, guitar lines. They can be whatever they are, right? But because I have a title, I can meditate, bringing back to what you asked, I can meditate on the title when I write. Because I'm not just going back to a vague idea. I have put a stamp on it the first 30 seconds of the idea. And then the other thing I do, I never re-record. So I write the song till it's finished based on the very first scratch idea. Does that make sense? So what happens then is this. Let's see if I can get it. Let me go back to your question. I'm getting carried away a little bit to the side. So I would incorporate meditation into the purpose of the song. Not necessarily to create songs, but it can come out of it. But it's to have the right motivation. First, I usually like to write about me and my perception of what's happening. But then I meditate on how can that be useful for other people? How does that translate into the world? So they're listening to it on the computer, in a movie, in the car, on the headphones when they're working out. In the movie, you place the song somewhere, and then you can meditate on what is it that they'd like to hear? They meaning everyone that you live with on this planet, because we're all together here, right? So someone in Pakistan is going to hear something you wrote. What would make an impact? You can meditate on that. And sometimes when I do that, I get a better sense of how I can change the chorus hook, or I can take out the bridge, doesn't need a bridge. They can only understand this in the Midwest, where they like really country rock. That was supposed to be a joke, it was bad. But so that's a meditation. On the road, I make it absolute. It's like a must for me to have 2.5 hours before showtime to meditate. So I close my eyes, I put eye patch on, I have headphones with either different tones or meditation stuff or rain or something that I feel like that day. And then I go in for at least 1 hour of hard meditation before every show.
Wow. There was one. Yeah.
My question is relating to incomplete or songs that you like stop in the middle because maybe you don't have inspiration to continue at the time. How do you keep the feel the same when you return back to them, and how do you keep that feel, or do you just completely revisit them at all?
Great. Two ways to look at it. One is that half-finished songs are like practicing scales. You don't have to finish every song. Most writers have this complex thinking, and I think producers and people that make production part have the same. They think everything has to be finished. I think it's really important to understand, if you're gonna be a writer, you start out not being good. Doesn't matter how much talent you have, you're not good, because you don't know how to write, but you may be inspired. So how do you get good? You need 10,000 hours, and then another 10,000 hours. You need to add hours and hours and hours and hours. You don't need to listen to all the great writers and then feel that you're not quite as good. That's not right. You write and start trusting who you are, and you'll know when the song is good. And if you can't quite get past a certain point, but you know the song is good, if you have those laying around like we all have, those I go back to. I go, there's one I have that's called Lighting Up the Sun. It's on my new solo record. And it just didn't come out right. And I played it for my wife, who I always play stuff for. She goes, I don't know. And I'm like, I know, it's not. Months and months, and I kept going back. And it's nothing like what I usually write. And then one day, it just like, there it was. And I kept revisiting. And it doesn't matter what the detail of the change was, but I made some changes. So to answer that part of your question is, I keep the original feel, but I'm completely unafraid of changing it. I think the number one thing that I've learned over the years with songwriting is I actually don't care what anybody thinks about my songs. And that was the biggest hurdle to get over, because I realized I have to get to know first me, almost like therapy. I have to figure out who the hell I am. But then I also have to just learn the craft. And if I'm not good enough, they're not gonna like it. I have to learn to be good at this. And it takes a lot of time. You have to know, if you say, you're like water through my hand or hands. What's the difference? How does it impact saying hand or hands? You're like a teardrop in my eye. You're like tears in my eye. Eyes. Those little things, and, buts, and ifs, all those things. That's when you get into the absolute crafting of it. People say, I can't take this pain. Then I go in the workshop, what kind of pain? I can't take this old pain, this sharp pain, this wet pain, this ancient pain, this family pain. Right. Hammer at that pain. Which kind of pain is it, right? So now you get into, this is crafting. And that you can do for years with one song until you get it just right, you know.
That seems like a fabulous place to stop. How about a big hand and thank you to Anders Osborne.
You guys are great. Thanks for listening.
Usually they run out.